sagte.
My core course is A Sense of Place in European Literature. The goal is to spend time with a piece of writing and then travel to the place the story is located. Place-based reading, it is called. Pay attention to how the reading experience is changed by your immersion in both the pages and the place. Our professor says on the bus ride there. This is our first place-based reading outside the city. When she announced our trip to Fanø, heads cocked in unfamiliarity. It is a tiny island 4 hours southwest of Copenhagen. Search bars filled as fingers punched in digits, the address of an unheard location none of us would otherwise cross the Atlantic to visit. At Fanølinjen, we are only a short ferry ride away from the island. A statue of a Fanic woman in native clothing greets us while we wait for the boats. Fenya and Menya, twin ships to pedal us across the water, transferring us between the two pieces of land. On board, from the front, the bow is cutting water, slicing a path towards the northern tip of Fanø. From the stern, a trail of white water in our wake, drifting away from the Danish coastline. Two sides of the ship, two distinctive views. The mainland behind you, the island ahead, the industrial receding, the rural approaching, the familiar and the soon to be. An oven-fresh meal waited for us at our housing site. Work time. Our guide Marco is sharing his knowledge of the land with us and leads us on a guided walk along the Woden Sea. This is the largest unbroken tidal flat system in the world, he tells us. When low tide reels in the waterline, sandy turf extends out for miles. Waterproof boots marched southwards, where the poem was inspired. We walked along a mosaic of crustacean legs, seashells, Pacific oysters, and other ocean gems dropped like silver trinkets out the pockets of the receding waterline. Bubbles popped through the sandbank as clams emerged to see what the ruckus was about. On their ascent, they got a gulp of air and an earful of student-led discussion. Ribbons of poetry and lyric prose swirl through me, stirred by the water, whipped by the wind, called forth by those blinding sheets of white, inviting me to walk into the sun. The horizon looked so approachable, a path of infinite flatness for me to wander and contemplate. When I came to, I turned around and my classmates were tiny dots on the beach in the shape of winter jackets. I recited a few more lines at the lip of the ocean. It was a hopeful goodbye, like tossing a coin down a wishing well, pressing an ear to the opening and waiting for the splash to say, I hear you. 26 bellies filled with a feast prepared by our host, Kirsten, a woman who wears seashells for jewelry and never has her hands by her sides. She welcomed us into her home for a meal. The darkening sky marked story time, and Kirsten and Marco told folk tales over the heckles of a puppy excited by how many more guests there were than usual. The European-style family dinner stretches into midnight. Under the moon, a cast of creative writers converge around the table, passing around good food, good jokes, and good book recommendations. Different tastes all assembling in one place. An early morning begins an eventful day. We began reading the Brixvold poem, trying to understand that dual movement between place and text, how reading a story in the birthplace of the writing colors the experience. Brixvold poem led us into town, where we weaved through the village of thatched roofs. A double analysis began. Poem in one hand, paper map in the other. How satisfying it is to round the street and discover the same landmark referenced when you turned the page. It is a rewarding navigational experience, one you simply cannot get staring at a little blue arrow on your phone. Dunes rolled in the hills, covered in moss and orchards and students burying this in their memory. We journeyed through what was once just a collection of coordinates until a faint sense of place pulsed within. Local artist Marie-Louise Exne allowed us into her workshop, into her mind, to see the island from her point of view, the interconnectedness present between her and the other artists after 26 years of painting the same horizon. Lastly, for the farewell performance, we met the man whose very poem brought us here, whose accompanying band of fiddlers gave musical texture to the words we'd been reciting all weekend long. The author who has lived his life on the beautiful Østerland we are studying, Jeppe Brixvold himself. I felt like a guest there, not a tourist.